Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to the HumanizeHer podcast. I'm your host, Erica Lockheimer, and I couldn't be more excited to be with you today. This is truly a movement and also a passion project of mine to celebrate women's voices, their stories, their endeavors, their challenges, all of it. We are going to have so much fun together learning about all of them. Let's do this and dive in. In this episode, I'm thrilled to welcome Jennifer Dulski, an executive leader with experience at tech giants like Facebook, Google, and Yahoo. She was also president and COO of Change.org and authored the book Purposeful. Jennifer's not just a seasoned executive. She's also a founder and CEO who's built and scaled startups. Currently, she's the founder and CEO of Rising Team, a platform empowering companies to enhance team performance. Let's get into it. Welcome, Jennifer. I'm so excited that you're here.
Oh, so fun to be here. What a beautiful location.
Yeah, thank you. We created this studio, and
it's our woman cave
for sure.
I like it. The woman cave. We've needed those for a long time.
We all need one of those for sure. I was thinking about this because your breadth of experience across many different companies, we're going to get all into it, but was really through Change.org. I've been in the tech industry for almost 30 years, and I've always been driven by purpose, and so Change had reached out to me a couple times.
Yes, we tried to recruit you, I think, numerous times to no avail, unfortunately. But I think they're still trying to this day to recruit you to Change.org.
Well, you all still have a special place in my heart. So Ben had reached out, and you had reached out. And I remember thinking, like, gosh, they just keep on, there's just like a pull, like every 3 or 4 years. I'm like, I really want to do this, And I remember talking to Ben, and I said, hey, we went to coffee, and the energy was amazing. The movement is amazing. It's just, how can you not say yes to something like that? He said, you need to talk to Jennifer. So I remember where it was, exactly where I had stopped in San Francisco in a car, and I just called you, and I never really met you.
In a car. That's so funny, because by then I was working in Facebook, and there were no conference rooms available as per usual. And so I took the call from one of those tiny little phone booths, and it was like pitch dark in there. I could not get the light to turn on for some reason. So that is a very funny first call.
If we
I was in a
Zoom
dark,
or something.
tiny room, and you were in a car. That's really funny. And it was phone, not Zoom.
That's true. That was many years ago then.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was, I think, 2017.
2017. Okay. Yeah. So a lot of things have changed since then.
Yeah.
For sure. So I was trying to remember exactly what we had talked about in that conversation. Do you remember?
I mean, my recollection is you were at a kind of turning point in your career, and you were thinking about a variety of different options and wanted to get, another person's ears on it. And usually in conversations like that, all I do is just listen, and you already had a sense of what you wanted to do, is my recollection.
I was at LinkedIn for, so many years at that point, but then I think we're always at these points in our career or in our life. Do I want to do something that has a little bit more purpose, or the same purpose that maybe you had during that time is not the same that it is now? And that's why I can't wait to get into more details of your book where we talk about that. But I just remember being very thankful for that conversation. And here, we never met. We were just on the phone. And this is just another good reminder that you can have these beautiful mentor moments where actually someone like you had changed my life in a decision point. I know I decided not to do it, which is fine.
And well, that's what I said, is you already, almost all the time when you have conversations like this, the person already has a good sense of what they want or don't want. It just sometimes really helps to talk to someone about it. In fact, when I went to Change.org in the first place, I was working at Google at the time. I had sold my first startup to Google, and I remember having a conversation with my mother who said, what are you doing? Like, you should just stay at Google. I had sold my company, so I had some retention bonuses and so forth. And I could hear myself in my conversation with her trying to persuade her why this was a good idea. Mm-hmm. And as soon as I hung up the phone, I said, I guess I want to do that.
Yeah.
Because I heard it. And that's kind of what happened, I think, in the conversation with us.
Yeah.
You were talking and you already knew.
And so there's some maybe validation or someone to kind of get you to that point and carry you through.
Yes.
Wow. So, so you left Google for Change.org, but it was through Google acquired. Can you tell us a little bit about what that company was? And
yeah, sure. It's It's interesting. So just a little background on my career because it's somewhat unique for tech.
Yeah.
I actually started out of college founding a nonprofit to help kids become first generation college graduates. And
Love that.
I
Wow.
taught high school for 4 years before I ever got into tech. And I left that job because I thought it wouldn't scale. You know, it was like I could raise twice the money and I could serve just exactly twice the students.
okay.
And so I thought I have to do something that's more scalable. But this past summer, 2024, was the 30th anniversary of that program. It still exists.
It still exists.
And so thousands of kids have gone to college through this program. And it's actually something I'm pretty proud of. So, you know, we think of scale in tech as always being about billions of people all at once. And time is another way to scale things, which is pretty interesting. So anyway, I did early career in nonprofit and teaching. And then I spent 10 years at Yahoo, which was incredible and a whole long separate story. And then I went and did my first startup, which was an exercise in extreme failure. Like we just failed over and over again.
Wow.
But extreme learning. Because that's what you get from failure. So that's
true.
good.
Exactly. I call it the festival of failure.
All right. I like that.
I like Festival of Failure. We need to coin that. That's good.
I've
really
used
good.
it in a few places. We actually, at Rising Team and at Change.org, we have Slack channels called Festival of Failure where people just go in and say, here's the mistake I made, here's what I learned. And the idea is if you celebrate it, then everyone else gets to learn.
Yeah.
And then
the
allows you-
humility is there, you know, it's just, hey, I'm human.
Right.
And it allows you to take risks. I think that's the other thing is people tend to like, oh, it has to work out. It has to be perfect. It has to
Right.
work. And then when it does, it's like, oh, I'm ashamed. And you know, you need to be able to fail to learn, to Elizabeth's point. And, you know, it's just part of the package. It's
So true. And the nice thing too is people recognize that you can have failures like that in work, but also in your personal life. Like sometimes there was someone the other day who posted their partner had gone away for the first time on a vacation by herself. And it was his job to pick up their child from preschool. And he was an hour late. The very
my
first
goodness.
time she went away and the school called. So we all have,
it's-
festival of failure moments.
It's okay. And I want to go back to the program you did for students because I'm a first gen graduate in my family and first person to
Congrats.
graduate in
That's
college. And
awesome.
I wish there was a program like that that could have navigated me a bit more. And I like the point that you also said, you talked about scale. And maybe it's not like these millions and millions of people, but you like impacted these particular thousands and thousands of students. I mean, that's just transformational.
It really is. I think of it as kind of depth versus breadth. And it's part of the reason I still teach now. So in 2020, I started teaching again at the business school at Stanford. And it's so nice to have that depth back in my life because when we work in tech, we're so used to breadth. It's like we touch so many people, but just a little bit or maybe a lot, but we don't ever really meet them.
Right.
And this is like, yes, I get that face-to-face, hands-on, and it may be fewer people, but deeper. One of the moms actually wrote me this beautiful letter back, a long time ago at that nonprofit. And she said, it's a sink or swim world. And you taught my son how to swim, which was so
That's
nice.
beautiful.
I kept that.
What was the name of the nonprofit again?
It's called Breakthrough. There's now,
Still going, okay.
I think about 30 sites around the country, including the one in Pittsburgh, which is the one I started.
So it's continuing to grow, but it's like local and then in those numbers. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's fun story is that my daughter actually taught at Breakthrough in San Francisco the past 2 summers.
Oh,
so
how
it
cool.
came like really full circle.
That is amazing.
So I did not finish the question that you asked me about.
Okay, let's wrap
I
it
was getting so sidetracked with all the goodness. It's a good
and
thing.
that's what we need, and that's what we need to do because we're going to go back and forth. This is a conversation. This is not an interview, Jennifer.
Yes, that's right. So you had asked about how I got to Google and why I left to Change and the startup that we sold to Google. So after I left Yahoo, I went to go do this first startup, Exercise in Extreme Failure, and we built many products along the way. The first one that started seeing some promise was a AI product.
What?
Years and years ago. This was 2010.
Okay.
We trained our own AI models, natural language processing. We scanned through tens of millions of local reviews to help people find local businesses without having to read, every single Yelp review on your iPhone. So it was kind of like an automated version of Zagat. And it was great. The product was so good, but I didn't have any money to market it to anyone. And so I just couldn't get anyone to use it. And we ended up licensing the data to other like Yellow Pages providers.
Yellow Pages, you see?
I know.
Pages?
What's a Yellow Pages?
Exactly.
I'm so dating myself. Anyway, they all bought it.
So Yellow, okay.
For all the kids listening, there was a phone book.
Actual book.
No, these were online.
Yellow Pages mixed with AI. Do we get that straight? I just want to understand.
I know, it's so crazy. So anyway, they all bought it, all the people who were doing that. And then I looked up and I was like, oh no, I sold to every single customer. There are no more. Like when people say product market fit, the idea is you need a product that fits in a market that is big enough.
Got it.
And so we had a product that fit, but a market that wasn't big enough. So we restarted again and we added a layer on top, which was deals, how to find local deals in your area. And that product was awesome, called the Deal Map. Google ended up buying it.
Okay.
Wow.
But the really interesting thing is that product, which I couldn't make successful as a standalone, now lives inside Google Maps.
Wow.
So when you look at businesses and it says this restaurant is casual and good for kids and so forth, that's
your product.
what we built.
Wow.
So you got acquired. So is that when you were then an employee of Google and that's that transformation?
Yes.
And I think I read somewhere a cool fact about that acquisition. What's the big shining star there?
I don't know that this is a cool fact or
I
a
think
sad
it's super
fact,
cool.
but it turns out I was the first woman entrepreneur to sell a company to Google.
Wow.
Which I found
That's
out
amazing.
because they have founder events, founders at Google, and I went and I was the only woman there.
Wow. Congratulations. That's
Well,
amazing.
maybe. I think
Why?
it's...
Because it's sad.
yeah.
The numbers are not great.
it was 2011, and now there have been many more since me, which is great. It's just, I think, a statement about female founders and how hard it is for women still to get funded and so forth, which I'm so happy to see that starting to change, and we have a long way.
Yeah, the numbers are still not great. Yeah. So I also want to talk about your book, Purposeful, which is like right here, and also that you've been in my ear for the last several weeks, like literally running and listening to your voice. And and so I'm so glad it's also in your voice, which you also shared was the first time.
First time I've ever listened to an audiobook was when I recorded my own audiobook because I prefer to read.
Was it
books,
hard
but-
listening back to yourself?
Oh, horrible.
Yeah.
I do not like, well, I don't think I ever listened back to it. I would listen like right in the recording studio, but I've never listened to the whole thing.
I think it's amazing. I listen to only audiobooks, but I buy the book because I also like something tangible, so it goes hand in hand. But I want to talk about this mission that you have in this book and why you wrote it, because when I was listening to it, I think about what we're creating here with Humanize Her, and it really is a movement to elevate women's voices. And so when I was listening to your book, by the way, when I was listening to the very first chapter, you're like, the difference between a mission and a vision. And I was like, oh my gosh, my website's wrong. I have it opposite.
Elizabeth, we put it as this and not that.
I know. And I was like, oh my gosh, no, I have a vision statement. I have I mixed up the whole thing. And I literally, after that chapter, I went home, I went on my website and I changed it because, you have a vision, which is, that is bigger than, whatever. Well, you should actually explain what it is. And then I could tell you because I changed it. And because the mission here is the podcast.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I
love it.
We got it figured out.
The vision.
Business 101.
Business one, no, it's true. That bothered me so much. And I should know that coming from LinkedIn and industry. But anyways.
It's something that a lot of people, and even I also got used to get them confused. So that's part of why I wrote about it, because I think if we clarify it, it actually is pretty straightforward. So the idea is that the vision is the where. What do you envision the world to look like if you are successful? So for instance, the company that I lead now called Rising Team, our vision is a world where everyone in the workforce feels deeply understood, supported, and able to reach their goals. The mission is the what, the how, right?
Yeah.
So the mission of Rising Team is to equip managers to build more engaged, connected, and successful teams. So what are we doing and what will the world look like if we're successful? The purpose is the why.
Yep.
And then the piece that most people miss is the story, right? The most compelling, most inspiring visions have a story along with it. And so I love this movement that you're starting.
Yay.
I think it's amazing. It's so necessary. And you clearly have a vision and a mission.
Yeah.
And what we should hear is your story.
Okay. So I could tell you what our vision is.
Yeah.
To cultivate a world where women thrive, shattering glass ceilings, and most importantly, redefining success on her own terms.
Love it.
Okay, so that was a late night of us.
Very late night.
2 in the morning
But
figuring
we
it
got
out.
out the laptop and we
typed it.
jammed out. It was fun.
It was really good. And so the mission is the podcast, like how we're going to be doing it, and we can be doing, and the community. And I think that's the difference with our podcast. It's a community podcast. I was talking to the team last night about it, and that is the uniqueness that we have. Is it's just not a podcast. So it truly is a movement, and that's what we hope to do. And so listening to your book, that's the framework that you have, is how to create a movement. What does it mean? All these tools. I mean, there's so many aspects in this book that everybody just needs to read it, first of all. But how is there some things that you can teach folks, and us learning, because where we're at right now, of, how would you say that we're going about this? Do you have any advice, or what tools? And
so you are, first of all, you are doing an amazing job. The thing that I learned about writing a book, first of all, writing a book is a lot like starting a movement, because the thing that helps is not to see it as some huge, gigantic goal, but rather the small pieces that add up to the big thing. I say it's not like you wake up one day and you're Gloria Steinem. Like it's a small
Darn it, but she's
pieces.
right here. She's right
She
here.
is.
Okay.
I know, I see her. So the other thing that's funny about it is, I wrote the book, and then I did a big book tour and all these speeches and so forth. And I realized from doing the book tour that I could simplify the book into just 3 things. I was like, so my advice is do your book tour first.
Really?
because
But then
your
how do you,
book
when
will
you
be
need to
better.
tour? Don't you need the
You
book
can't.
to tour?
I mean, you can't. I'm joking.
Okay.
I'm joking. But
I'm just being logistically, how's that
Travel
going to
to
work?
the future.
Imagine you were doing the book tour
Yeah.
and writing this. Do your,
got
your
it.
deck first, because actually it can be a lot more concise. So the 3 things that I, rolled it up into for the tour are what I call the 3 C's. It is courage, community, and commitment. So the things that you really need to start a movement, the first is courage, which check, you've already done. Every movement starts with a single small step.
Yeah.
So do you remember what the very first step you took to start this movement was?
We gathered people together.
Yeah.
And wanted to get their input and insights of this is what we're thinking. What do you think?
Yeah,
And
exactly. So that's great. And it was just a small
I
gathering.
feel like I'm being
sometimes.
judged right
What's
now.
the need? Yeah.
You're not being
But
judged.
no, but in a good way. I want to pass this test.
You've already passed it. So
competitive.
We are
Spoiler.
competitive, but come on, you're thinking about it.
I was thinking of answers too. I'm like, ooh, I'm ready to answer if you're not ready.
So you kind of did step 1 and 2 together.
Okay.
Oftentimes, when I started Rising Team, the first step I did was just write an outline myself. I just I didn't try to raise money. I didn't try to hire anybody. I just wrote it down in a doc and said, what might this look like, and so forth. So small gathering, outline, an email, a petition sometimes.
Okay.
Second step is community. It is not a movement until you have other people joining you. And so that sometimes is hard because, yes, you have to raise your hand and ask for help. And that is often the most surprising thing to movement starters, is if they have passion, other people are always eager to join them. I talk a little bit I sometimes talk about this idea that courage is like starting a standing ovation for a show that's just pretty good. You have to stand up, and you don't know if anyone will join you. And maybe sometimes they don't, but almost always they do. And those first few people to stand up are your community, and you can leverage them and help them get involved. And that's exactly what you've done here, right? People joined you, you gave them roles, you gave them responsibility, you infused passion into them. And then the third is commitment, which is just, you got to keep going. Some days are going to suck. And that is certainly true of starting a company, which I think of as a movement. Some days are really hard. And I think of it like a mountain, and I say, it's just keep climbing. like one step at a time. And the two key factors are, do you believe in what you're climbing for? And do you like and respect and trust the people you're climbing with?
That is good. It's so true.
Yeah. It's like the late and hard nights are worth the bright and easy mornings eventually once you get there.
That's good.
Yeah.
And, you know, the thing is, it's also really easy sometimes to think, oh, it's like some days I feel what I call top of the mountain, you know? It's like, oh, it's so bright. I can see the top. This is going to be incredible. And the key is to keep moving on those days too, because it's easy to just sit down and have the picnic on those days.
Yeah.
And then other days are like total bottom of the valley. And I think in my own experience, what I've told people, everybody has different mechanisms they use to get out of the valley.
Yeah.
And mine has been literally just imagining the metaphor and reminding myself that the days will get sunny again. And sometimes I stay in there for like a few hours. It's not usually days for me, but it can be a
that's
few
good.
hours where I just feel like, oh, this will never work.
Yeah.
And what has helped me the most is for my community, whether that's my friends or my family or sometimes my team, to let them know when I'm in the valley and what will help me get out.
Yep.
Yep.
Because everybody's different,
Yeah.
right? Like for me, I don't want advice, right? I just want people to be like, you're going to nail this. Like, you're awesome. It's going to be fine.
Keep
That's all-
lifting me up right now in this
Exactly.
moment 'cause I'm
Don't tell me
down.
what to do. Don't tell me,
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
So
But that's part of the journey, right? You're going to have those moments. I mean, we've had, even already, it's been less than a year and we've launched this thing. And we had a moment in the summertime where it's like, I'm in a funk. I'm not as motivated. I don't know what's going on. I'm like in a weird space. And she's like, I'm kind of feeling that too. Maybe it's the season. I don't know. But then we
I think
help
there is
each
the
other
summer
out of it.
slump. I think that I think it happens.
You want to go
Yeah.
out on the lake and
That's
play
right.
with
and
family.
also taking a break is
Is
a good
good.
idea
Is a
too.
good thing.
So you can't, when I say just keep climbing, I don't mean every single day.
Every
like
single time.
sometimes you got to
take a break.
Yeah. jump
And I was listening to the one of the last chapters in your book. It's not the last one, but haters are going to hate, and
Yeah, they
and
are.
they are. But and also you're talking about when movements, which is change.org, and you have all these amazing stories where I mean, I'd love to hear. Maybe there's so many that you had interviewed. There's one the hijab, with Nike and changing the attire, and so I would love to hear some of those stories that moved you, and then also talk about hater where maybe it was adversity in that moment. You say keep climbing, but you're gonna sometimes there's actual people that are pushing you down beside it even being in your head.
Yeah.
And so how do you get past those moments and continue to move forward?
So the interesting thing about this is that the more successful you are, the more likely you have haters, right?
Okay.
Because then you get to be more visible. So it's actually a good sign. Like the more successful you are, the wider your movement goes, the more visible it is, the more likely someone is going to not like it.
Yeah.
And the real question to ask is, does it matter? Do those people who are criticizing me even matter at all?
Yeah.
If my movement's still moving forward, maybe I don't have to pay attention to them whatsoever.
Yeah.
Sometimes if they're actually getting in the way of your movement growing, then you do have to pay attention. And that's where getting more people on your side can help. So there was one woman who, she had a change.org petition to get the first woman on currency in Canada.
Oh, yeah, that was a great story.
And she used to get a lot of haters. She would go on the radio and people would call in and say things like women belong in the kitchen, not on the currency and stuff like that. And
You can make
she
us mad?
Yeah. Oh, it got worse. I mean, they'd say, women should be topless. Like it was just horrible.
But it should be topless because
If they're going to be on currency, they should be topless. Just horrible hater things.
Ew.
And she actually carried around a printed copy. When people sign petitions, they have the ability to say why they signed.
Yeah.
And she printed out all the reasons for signing, and she just carried around with her in her bag. So every
smart.
time someone said something nasty, she just pulled it out and read all the things people loved about her and her campaign. And so keep the keep the people who love you close and ignore the people who don't.
And it's so hard to do that and not look for that validation also from the wrong people, or also like, why am I going back to that person? Like you may have changed also as an individual
consider
too.
the source. It may be envy, but there's a saying: people are going to talk whether you're doing bad or good. There's going to be people talking about you all the time.
It's
Like you feel like you're being judged.
How you let it
always.
affect you is what matters.
The other thing is, to your point, people don't say really horrible things unless they themselves are hurt in some way.
Or have an insecurity
it's usually about them most of the time, which is sad, right?
I just posted about this the other day because I read this amazing book called Villains Need Love. And it's an artist from Spain who draws these beautiful illustrations of famous characters hugging their villains, like Dorothy hugging the Wicked Witch, and Star Wars, I think it's Han Solo hugging Jabba the Hutt and so forth. So we did a lot of work on this also during my time at Facebook, looking at why people join extremist groups and what causes them to join, what causes them to leave. And almost every time it's people are lonely and just want to be loved, right? And if they get loved by the wrong group, it can cause a lot of harm. But I think we could do a lot by offering more love and curiosity in the world instead of assumptions.
And creating positive communities for them to be involved in instead of...
I mean, literally, there was one person who had recently left a neo-Nazi group, and he said to me, I was a 14-year-old, really lonely, bullied kid in the alleyway, and if it had been a baseball coach that came up to me instead of a neo-Nazi group, I would gladly have joined the baseball team.
Yeah.
It's just anybody in the moment.
to be seen.
Wow. Super powerful. And it's, again, you flip the script. Now we're feeling sad for villains.
Sorry.
And kill them with kindness. And
Sorry.
So, no, this is good. I mean, no, it's great. I mean, because I think we can get stuck in looking at that negativity, that instead.
Right.
Right.
And so instead, like, let's bring our own positivity to the world and our own curiosity. That's the thing I've struggled with and tried really hard, is every time someone has a really different value or belief than I do, instead of just going at it, which is probably what I used to do, is just try to start from curiosity. And given the time and political context we're in now, it's more important than ever.
Seek to understand.
Yeah. And I think also seeking to understand, there's another focus area that you had is, everybody's going through something.
Yeah.
And we're all humans at the end of the day. We're not robots. We have life. We would like to think that we just get this job done and we just do the next thing and and like everything's perfect. You got no kid issues, you got no family issues, you got no animal issues, you got nothing, right? But it's not a reality. And I read some exercises that you've done to be able to assess that even from a crowd and so it'd be great to hear about maybe some of those examples, and maybe only some of your personal examples, because at the end of the day, it's life, and we're all trying to get by, and we're not perfect.
True.
It's hard. It's really hard.
It's so true. And this, Everybody's Got Something's actually the title of a book by Robin Roberts, which I absolutely adore. If you haven't read this book, I definitely recommend it, about her own health journey and struggle. And she shares like incredible tips and ideas in that book. I have, as we all do, my own experience with this. Like, we can, as you said, put on a face like everything's fine all the time at work, and it just isn't.
Right.
And sometimes that happens in a way that is really visible to others, and then sometimes it happens in a way that's not.
Yeah.
And what we need to do, especially in our workplaces and the communities we start, is help people feel safe to express those things. So my personal example, of course I have many, as we all do, but one that comes to mind is that when I first graduated from business school, I started my job at Yahoo, and 3 weeks into my brand new job, I got a call from my doctor at work who said, you have a brain tumor and you need to see a neurosurgeon right away.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I had discovered this because my husband and I were trying to get pregnant and we couldn't, and they did a bunch of tests, and this is what they found, which I did not expect in any way. And so I was in a glass conference room where everyone could see me, I was just sobbing. Like, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if I should leave. I didn't know who I should tell. It was one of those things where, again, it was visible to people in some way because they could see me in there, but they didn't know what had happened.
Yeah.
And so I had to think, do I tell them? Do I not tell them? And I went and told my manager, I was very lucky to have a great manager at the time who said, you need to go home, you need to take care of yourself, et cetera. I had to take a month off of work to have surgery, 3 weeks into a brand new job, which I did not feel great about. But the truth is, so many people, whether it's that moment or anything else, everybody has it. And at a conference, before I wrote this book, I was at a conference and I was giving a talk and I said, I want to see if I can find the commonalities between people. I had a list of 5 questions I was going to ask the audience and ask them to stand up. And my hope was by the end of 5 questions, like almost everybody would be standing. And my first question was, have you received serious medical news about yourself or someone close to you while at work?
Should we stand up?
Yeah.
Would you stand up?
Yeah, we would.
Right.
Yeah.
And
No,
that's
it's true.
exactly what happened. Like 80, 90% of the audience stood up. And it was I was shocked. And everybody just looked around and had this moment like, oh my God, it's all of us. I think I'm
It's
alone,
true.
but I'm really not.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing we have to remember. And yes, we built at Rising Team a kit. We haven't talked about Rising Team yet.
We need to go into that.
It is about resilience and how to help support your colleagues at times when they're struggling.
Yeah, and kudos to your manager for 3 weeks in building that safe space for you to tell him or her,
Yeah, him.
what was going on, right? And giving you
was.
the grace to focus on yourself. It's people first. Those are the best
Absolutely.
managers that are people first.
Completely.
Were you scared? Was it hard to have that conversation?
I was really scared. I think it was partially because I was so new, and partially there's something where like it was my brain. Like I thought, what if something happens in my surgery and I can't actually do
function.
this job anymore? And so I was very nervous to tell him, and I was very nervous to have that surgery. And lucky for me, I still feel so grateful and so incredibly lucky because I had a benign brain tumor. Like it could have been cancer, and there's so many. It could have been worse.
Yeah.
Like you could have gone without knowing if you weren't trying
That's
to
true.
get
I
pregnant.
probably would have gone
also.
blind if I hadn't done anything about
Because
it.
then
There's-
it gets bigger and takes over. And,
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
So, but it's, again, I'm not alone. And I've had many, many team members on my team who've had to handle things like this and things with their families and so forth. So it's all, you're right. It's how do we be there for each other? And that's what makes, work and communities great environments.
Yeah, and just to poke on that a little bit, because I've been, I mentor a lot of women in the workforce, and I've had different women say like, no, I do not want to share
I know.
what's going on in my life. I knew one woman that had cancer for like a whole year and didn't want to share because guess what? I don't know if it's going to impact my work. Is it going to be judged? Maybe I can't do the job, or that promotion comes up. Like all of a sudden it depends in the environment. Thankfully you're in a great environment. You can also not be in a real supporting environment where all of a sudden now that is impacting your work. And it's like, well, I'm able to get through this, but now it just, I don't know what is your thoughts around that as well?
I agree. That's really tough. And the thing that's important is for those who can to try to find an environment where you do feel safe to share. And the best workplaces have that sense of high psychological safety, have finding managers you can trust. I mean, in my case, I didn't have a choice, right? I had to leave for that surgery, and there was no way out of telling them. But it's true that feeling unsafe to share is probably a sign that you are not in the right place.
Yeah, and that you should leave.
Exactly. You should.
You should,
Not
yeah.
everybody has that
Yeah.
option.
Option, though,
because
the reality,
financial
financial-
circumstances and families and all that. But
Yeah.
if you can, you should.
But you should.
Yeah.
Wow. Jeez. You were going to talk about Rising Team. And so if you can go into that a little bit, and what is it and how is it helping companies and what kind of impact are you making? And also the whole idea, I mean, you're the founder and CEO of this company, which sounds like a breath of all your experience wrapped into one company, and you're executing on it. So I'd love to hear more about it and what
You
it
just
is.
described it perfectly. Like, I feel,
All right, that's a wrap.
Check.
yes, I feel like this is the company I've been meant to build my whole life. It's kind of everything wrapped up. The thing that I loved most in all my jobs in big tech and in working in schools and so forth is just the power of the team. And when individuals, I told you our vision before is to help people feel deeply supported and understood. When people feel like that, they perform at their best. And when the teams are high performing, companies and organizations are high performing. And I felt like I didn't have the tools as a leader, like both as an individual manager and then as a manager of hundreds of other managers. I would learn things, like I would have an executive coach or I would get sent to some amazing training, and then I'd go back to my team. And I always said it was kind of like being taught to fish, and you like go out back to the lake. I felt like I had the binder on how to fish instead of the pole. And so I started building tools. What Rising Team provides is software that helps every manager at every level run deeply connecting interactive workshops with their teams without needing an outside facilitator. So that means you can scale it to all levels of an organization. And we put it into kits, and they vary by topic and timing. So they run from 10 minutes to 2 hours. Some of them are just, how do you connect and get to know each other as humans, like life events that have shaped you or things you're grateful for. And some of them are based on the skills that drive high-performing teams. So how do we teach resilience, and how do we help people set the right clear expectations and create psychological safety and so forth. And then the thing that I probably love most, when I first wrote the outline, that first step in the movement, I had a paragraph in 2020 that said, personalized AI coach. But I couldn't build it in 2020.
Got it.
But in 2024, we can. So it now has a hyper-personalized AI coach that is available to everyone on the team 24/7.
Live right now?
Yeah. So
Nice,
if I
congrats.
run these sessions with my team once a month or, every few weeks or even once a quarter, they're telling me all this information about their preferences and their talents and how they like to receive feedback and so forth. So I hear that and they feel
that's so
valued
great.
by me, but I don't always remember. But my AI coach remembers everything they ever said.
that is super
I can
smart.
ask it questions about like someone's feeling burned out or how do I give constructive feedback? And it will give me an answer specific to you that will be different from the answer that if I asked about you based on all it knows about you. So it's basically the tool I wish I had as a manager.
That is
That's
so cool.
amazing.
Yeah. So walk us through. So then as, say, I'm an employee of yours, then I'm talking to this AI coach and I'm feeding it information.
You're talking to me.
You're talking
First,
to you.
nothing gets fed to the AI coach unless we have a session together.
Oh, and it's
so
part
the
of the session.
sessions
Okay.
are synchronous, live, either virtual or in person, and we talk. So it might be about appreciation, and I might be asking you these questions that the software asks. Do you like to be appreciated in private or in a small group or a large group?
Got it.
Do you like to, be appreciated with cash and gifts or be asked for your advice or,
all those
these
things.
things?
Those all sound great.
Yes. So I've learned that about you.
Yeah.
But then later when I want to appreciate you, I go ask the AI coach to remind me.
And
So
you're
you
like, I'm
have it-
meeting someone. And
So you have it
Yes.
recorded while you're doing it, or you
typed.
go?
It's the software so the sessions are all done on either a phone or laptop. You're synchronous, but you're typing it in because
Gotcha.
also you can go back and look at those
Got
results.
it. Okay. I was just wondering if it's listening to you and typing for
No,
you. None
no.
of that's.
Although we are-
because voice to text, I just hate typing, and so
Yes.
I would want that feature.
You can. Well, you can use voice to text.
can?
So in
Okay.
the part where you're entering your own into the software, you can use voice to
can use-
text.
okay.
And then we are adding voice to text to the AI. too.
Okay, that'd be
Cool.
that's great.
That's amazing. Heck yeah.
And you asked about the impact. Like this has been, I think, the most fulfilling part of it, which is every single customer of ours, from Google to the Bank of Hawaii to we have the Massachusetts state probation officers. Like it's a very wide range of customers. Every single one of them see lifts in employee engagement, in ENPS, in manager effectiveness. Like it genuinely works. If you give people the tools to spend time understanding and valuing each other and then teaching them the skills of high-performing teams, turns out it works pretty well.
Yeah.
Want to call out really quick, you're glowing when you're talking about this, and I love that. It's like you found your purpose, right?
for
This
sure.
is,
Yeah.
like you said, this is the
It did
thing
take
that
me
you knew
50
was right.
years,
Yeah.
but
No, it's okay. I'm right there
Good
with
things
you.
take
I'm right there.
time. Good things
We're
take time.
Reinventing ourselves at 50. Well, it makes sense. You need all that data.
It's
You
true.
need all that data to then figure out, and the confidence to be like, this is what I'm going to do.
that is absolutely
Yeah.
true.
No, I'm with you on
And
that.
it is very fulfilling because you see, it's kind of the combination of the breadth and the depth I was talking about before. Like we can do it at scale, and I see, real people send us feedback saying this is meaningfully better. My work life, I feel more connected to my team. And it turns out, of course, I did not predict the pandemic, but the thing I thought was important became pretty urgent.
Yeah.
Overnight.
Is that when things kind of
Everybody's team is distributed. Well, we had a big
Makes
big
sense.
aha.
Yep.
My first version of the software was just for managers to use one-on-one with
Yeah.
each person. And everybody said, I love it, but it just takes too much time. And so I said, well, what if we put them into teams? And that was like the light bulb moment, because it also really helps teams bond at a time when teams are really disconnected.
Oh, that is so great.
It brings everyone along the same journey. So no one feels left out.
Yeah. And they feel heard. I think even just, I've been managing teams for many, many years, and you have these intimate conversations, you have these team meetings, and we're just human. We actually just forget. And it's
so
like, it's not intentional. It's like, I remember that great conversation, but it's like, what was that thing that they said, or what was important to them? Exactly what you had just shared. And if you have a tool that, it's not replacing that human aspect.
Right.
It's a tool to help you then remember that conversation. And it's like just a trigger. So
That's right.
I think that'd be super, super helpful.
You know, it's interesting because this is, I think everybody's worried that AI is just going to replace everything. And so the secret sauce here is the combination of deep human connection plus AI. Because if you don't do the I care about you part first and I want to listen to you, the AI isn't really as effective.
Yeah.
The biggest objection we get actually is, I don't have time to do this. And it's like, yeah, well, no wonder your team doesn't feel valued by you. Because
that's true.
We
That's
only
true.
suggest 3 to 4 hours per quarter. So it's
That's
not
nothing.
a
3
lot
to
of
4 hours. I
time.
mean, I used to do one-on-ones. It used to be weekly, and then I was like, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Every other week, but 3 to 4 times a
for
quarter.
the team.
For the team.
Right.
I think I helped you back off that because I couldn't find time on your calendar.
She
I'm
used
like,
to handle my
"Lady,
calendar."
We do not have time for these one-on-ones every week.
Well, because I mean, it kind of goes back to the problem that you're solving is because you wanted human connection, and I wanted to understand how people felt, and so that was. But then you can't scale all of that.
That's right. So
And it's
imagine you
challenging.
could do it with your whole team at once. That helps. And also, I know as you progressed in your career, you manage lots of other managers. So if you could also help them do this.
And then you scale it all out. This is a great tool. And it sounds like you have small companies and large companies. It's all over the map. So you can handle it. Wow.
Is there an ideal team size that you think it works best with?
We do. We originally set the cap at 10, 10 per team. And
That
now
makes
it's
sense.
14 because it turns out in this environment with a lot of layoffs and so forth, people's teams are getting bigger. So now it's 14. But and we have separate kinds of sessions that people can do with really large groups, like we're going to use with your event.
Yeah, so we actually get to use your product live with 200 people at an event. Let's see how that goes.
The HumanizeHer community is in for a treat.
No, but I mean, that's what I'm super excited because actually, just case in point, we have 200 people that are coming for the HumanizeHer launch party, and we're like, we want them to feel connected.
Right.
And we can talk about how this even story came about because again, I'm reading your book, running. And when I run, I think about a lot of things. And then I just like posted about it. I'm reading Jennifer's book. This is really great. I'm thinking that, and I just tagged you on Instagram. Like we're not friends or anything. I was just like, I'm just being bold. I don't care. And we're going to talk anyways. And then you're like, I have an idea. Do you want to chat?
Yes.
And I was like, I'm thinking the same thing. And my sister's event planning and you, and we were all, how do we do this? And you're like, I have an exercise for you. No.
Because you also wanted to connect people around the theme of inspiring women. So we actually built something just for you too.
Oh,
how cool is that? Custom app right here.
That's right. But now we're going to give it also to everyone else because your idea and your movement should be shared.
Scale.
Thank you. That is really thoughtful. Okay, so I just want to understand what this means. You talk about acronyms that are important to you, and you want to share what some of those meanings are. And to be honest, acronyms always like, I'm like, I can't remember what they mean.
Yeah.
I love them. I want to
You
figure
love
them out. It's like a puzzle.
I love a puzzle, but then sometimes when you're at a corporate company, there's like hundreds of
too many.
acronyms, and so then there's too many. But I'm excited to learn about like 5.
I have a funny story really quick.
Okay,
what
do
is
it.
it?
Yeah.
Acronym kind of when I first joined LinkedIn. Everyone,
this is a good story.
I came from healthcare.
Yeah.
I was working in healthcare administration. Came to LinkedIn, and with my first few weeks, all of her staff meetings, they're like L&D, 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 and I'm like, all right. I pulled some lady to the side, my friend Dominique, actually, she helped me with everything, but she built that safe space for me.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, I have to ask you a question. I feel really stupid, but why do you all keep talking about labor and delivery in a tech company? And she's like, oh, you're so cute. It's learning and development. I'm like, So much
I'm
more
like, yeah,
sense.
we're making babies here. Yeah.
But yeah, acronyms can get away from you. You know?
That is very true.
Yeah,
And
but yeah,
that's a
so I'm
very
glad
funny
I'm
story.
glad you asked because it would have been a
I
lot
would have been
different.
confused for a long time.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's a good point. I think I love acronyms so much because they were really a staple in my family. So when I was
okay.
growing up, we had a list of acronyms on the fridge that like, this is before texting. So, now everybody LOL, although I hear LOL is out from my children.
Oh, it's not hip anymore.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Haha, apparently. Yeah.
Oh,
it's
I use
better
that a
than
lot.
simple.
Okay, good. Yeah, it is.
pretty
Ha, ha, ha.
straightforward.
Oh, yeah, I do it a lot. That's true.
But my family acronyms were like FHB was when people would come over and they're like, we hadn't quite made enough food. So FHB stood for family hold back. So we would like not quite eat as much to save more food for guests and stuff like that. So we had a list of acronyms.
It's almost like a secret language you had. Nobody else knew what that acronym
so
was, but everybody
thoughtful.
else did. I like that.
Exactly. That's what they were, their secret language. And then as I have become an adult, well, when I got to college, my friends and I created a new set. There was IMS, which is when someone calls you, at night and says, do you want to come out? And you say IMS, that means in my sweats. Like I'm not going out tonight.
Okay.
So
That was college, acronym.
that was college.
Okay,
And
got
I
it,
think
got it.
now like people probably just go out in their sweats. Like,
Yeah.
definitely. Or pajamas.
Yeah,
Leggings,
I see them
so
like
the
going
daily-
to school that way when I drop off my
so
daughter at school.
that one's probably out of date. But I have developed a few work-related acronyms that have been helpful and life-related ones. So
Love it.
I'll share just a couple here. One is what I call BGF. So I was a coxswain on the rowing team in high school and college,
Which is what?
Coxswain is the person who sits in the back of the boat and during the race, they steer, they coach the team, and they strategize the pace of the race. So you're basically driving a team to high performance, which is, of course, what I love to do in life in general.
And didn't you also fight for that position as well?
I
There wasn't many
did.
women
That's
or
true.
none actually in that position.
It's true. Well, I was in high school, I coached the men's crew team. And then when I got to college, I wanted to cox men also. And I said, can I join the men's team? And they said, no, that only men could do that. And I said, well, that doesn't really make sense because the criteria are that you be small, which I definitely am, and that you be strategic and smart and good at the job. And I said, so just let me try out.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'm hiring now for a chief of staff, and I got the most amazing. We got 800 applicants for the job.
Wow.
But one of them pulled that line out of my book and was like, just let me try out. So I was like, oh, yeah, that
nice.
was
Well played.
Okay, I'd almost be like, you're hired.
So I said, let me try out. If I suck, then don't put me in the
Yeah.
role. And
That's great.
they said no. I went first to the freshman coach, said no. Went to the varsity coach, said no. I went to the athletic director of the university. He said no.
Wow.
And so I joined the women's team. And then 3 months later, they called me back. The athletic director called me and said, we've been talking about it and we changed our minds. And you can cox the men's crew team if you want. But I had already joined the women's team. So
Too
I
bad.
said, no,
Snooze,
thank
you
you. And then my boat won nationals that
Yeah.
year.
Oh, heck yes.
That is
You just
amazing.
proved them wrong
Exactly.
in the
That's
best
so
way.
good.
But the good thing about it is now when I go back to visit and I ask the teams, who coxes the men's team, and they're almost all women. So
What a change.
it really needed to happen regardless of whether it was me or not. Now I forgot why I
the
started this
acronym.
story.
The
Oh,
acronym.
yes.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
so Cox Crew taught me lots of leadership lessons. There is a great story about a British rowing team in the UK that wanted to win an Olympic medal, and they were doing everything they could to win this medal, and they asked themselves the same question before everything they did, which is, will it make the boat go faster? That's BGF. So what should we eat for breakfast? Well, will it make the boat go faster? How many times a day should we practice? Should it make the boat go faster? And so with my team, we now use BGF as an acronym because we set a clear goal for the half, and everything we ask ourselves, this particular item on our roadmap, is it BGF or not? And so it's become kind of our shorthand for how we drive the most.
It can also tell you what not to spend your time on,
Exactly.
right? Like that, be like, nope, it's not gonna make a difference. Let's put it to the side.
That's right.
Nope.
I mean, how many times did you face that in
And
your
rat hole,
Right.
like a lot of times, and it's just
You end up slowing yourself down instead.
and just sit and spin, and you actually are not making any progress. You're not going faster, and just wasting a ton of time.
And this also gives everybody a tool to use their own judgment.
Yeah.
Like they can say, this is not going to make the boat go faster. So I'm going to move it to the side. Or I really think we should do this because it's BGF. And it's just faster to say BGF. So
I love it.
one of the acronyms. The other one that I'll share now, and then maybe I'll save one for the end, is DMSU, which is I can get in my head a lot when little things happen that I think might go badly. I have a story about a big customer we were trying to sell, and he sent me an email that said, do you have 5 minutes to chat? And in my head, I'm like, oh my God, this deal is not going through, right? Exactly. It's like when a teacher asks you to chat or your boss, what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
Totally. What
You
is
automatically think negative. Like, why? Like, what did I do to screw up?
And so I just assumed this meant bad, because if it was good, he would have just written it in the email.
Yeah.
But instead he asked me to chat. It has to be bad. And I was talking to a friend, and they said, my mother-in-law is a psychiatrist, and she says, let's not make things up. And so I was so DMSU is don't make shit up. And
I love that.
Yes.
My husband is going to thank you for that later.
I'm just going to put it all over the place.
Right. Because we don't know until we know. And as it turns out, in that particular example, it was nothing. It took me 2 weeks to find time to have a chat with him. And it was nothing. He just said, oh, there's one person more I need to get approval from, and it's taking a little longer than I thought. And that deal did go through, and it was fine. And there was no reason for me to make up the story in my head about it. So
you just tortured yourself for
Right.
2 full weeks.
That's actually a lot of years of therapy. I'm just gonna put that acronym on my forehead.
It's true also in personal life. So if we go back to everybody's got something, like, my daughter had a major health issue last year, and it was so easy to get in my head about what might it have been. And so I just really tried using that and saying, don't make it up. Like, just wait until you have an actual answer, and then we'll take it from there. And, there are times in our life where scenario planning makes sense. Like if if you're diagnosed with a gene that might cause an illness, of course it makes sense to change your behavior. I'm not going to say you should be like, don't make shit up about anything.
Right.
But the vast majority of times, it's a nothing burger. And we just spin in our heads over it all forever.
It's so true. I do that all the time.
Yeah.
That's hard.
But it is hard when it comes to health situations, like you were talking about with your daughter. That's more, you want to know the answer so soon. Like I remember when you had your health scare with your cancer.
I got skin cancer smacked in the middle of my face. Yeah. I looked like Frankenstein.
She went through with family, with friends, just conversations of what it could
scary.
be. Like, am I going to lose my nose? It's like, just wait
don't go on TikTok looking up first.
But wait until you have the diagnosis, and then you can move forward with a plan, and it's more comfortable to approach it that way.
Yeah.
So
it's for sure.
That's great advice.
Yeah, it's super scary, and it's still scary day. It's like, oh my gosh, this little thing is growing. Is it this? And then now I have to get body checks every like 2 months, and then strip down and check every spot you got.
My husband has this too, so
he does.
I can relate.
Yeah, it's not fun. It's not fun, but like you said, everybody's got something going on.
That's right.
Everybody does.
Glad you're watching it closely.
Yeah. It's like another thing. You have to be your best advocate for your health, and you know what's going on in your body. But we all got something. So
yeah, it's true. Speaking of that, I mean, when I had that diagnosis, I had headaches for probably 5 years before.
So you just didn't think anything of it?
I thought they were sinus headaches, and
took Advil
now
or
I always
something?
tell my kids, like, if you feel anything that's different
off
in your body, you get it checked. You just never know.
Yeah. You just never do. Yeah. Wow. Thank you, Jennifer. You are just, if you look throughout your career, you look through your book, you look at what you're doing for a living at Rising Team, you have this constant theme of really wanting to uplift and support people, and I think you're living your purpose, which is amazing. how do you continue on that journey? How do you continue? What's your why now? I know you're like, I'm doing it, but how are you carrying it forward, and any stories you want to share around it?
Yeah. When I think about this, there's a couple things that come to mind. One is this notion that everybody likes to be uplifted in slightly different ways. It's kind of like what we were talking about before with the valley. And one funny story that comes to mind is when I first got married to my husband, we really have opposite preferences in how we like to be taken care of when we're sick.
Okay.
So he likes to be completely ignored, literally does not want any attention paid to him whatsoever. And I like to be totally doted on and taken care of. And so we would do what we thought we want. He would get sick and I would dote on him and ask him all the time if he wants things. And I would get sick and he would ignore me. And it was horrible. It took us like 10 years to figure this out. But once we unlocked it, we realized like the key is understanding the people that we're trying to uplift. And that is one of the key premises behind Rising Team is how do you ask people the right questions so you understand them enough to uplift them. Right. And then the other thing that has been helpful to me is it's actually one of my other acronyms. I call it FOAM. It's my version of FOMO. It's FOWM, which is focus on what matters. Because at the end of the day, like all of this stuff I care about the company I'm building and the impact I've had and so forth. And at the same time, like when you look at what people say when they're on their deathbeds, they don't say, I wish I was on one more board. They say, did I spend enough time with the people that matter to me? And did I do anything that matters in the world? And I heard this incredible story on The Moth the other day of a woman who, sorry, I don't want to bring us down to a sad note. It's actually a happy note, but she was diagnosed with stage 4 thyroid cancer. She was given like 4 to 6 months to live. And she said, what I need is connection and community. And she reached out to her friends and family and said, I just need you to love me. And she said, it was incredible. They came, they brought food, they built her this was during the pandemic. They built her backyard area where people could visit with her. And she ended up living like 2 years longer than they expected. And she said, if the game of life is giving and receiving love, I'm winning. I just loved it.
How can we just get that in everybody's brain? I mean, we're conditioned to think so differently.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a beautiful story, and it goes back to your acronym.
Focus on what matters. And there have been a few moments in my life and work where that has become really clear. Like I've had a couple scary incidents with my daughters and that thing you were so worried about, the deck that was due or the email that someone wrote you, like all that stuff disappears when those things come front and center.
All right. We're having an amazing conversation on a lot of uplifting, and things are going well. Things are doing wonderful. But it would be great to hear, when things weren't going well for you, when there was been failure in your life. We're all experiencing it at some point. So let's get a little vulnerable with you, Jennifer, and here's some good
your failure festival.
Yeah, we need the failure festival. We're having a party here.
Some of these don't feel like a festival. I will be honest about that. It's easier to call the small failures a festival. I'd say, I've had so many small failures. Like as we talked about, the first startup that failed so many times. In fact, one funny one is we also named that company 4 different times. And the second name I picked was Centered, which I thought was a great name, but I could not afford the proper spelling of it. So I picked Centered with no third E. And instead I used an apostrophe there, which by the way is the worst ever idea for naming a company.
Okay.
Because you can never talk about yourself in the possessive, like Centered's new product then has two apostrophes. Horrible idea. And also you would know as a technical person that an apostrophe is a special character.
Yeah, it's a very special character. It's going to break everything
in your code. It was
it's not going to work.
Yes. Nobody told me that. So yes, lots of dumb decisions along the way. But the biggest failures, I'd say, were the things where decisions I made impacted other people negatively. And the hardest one was during my time at change.org, we started with an ad-based business model, and I hired a bunch of people thinking that this model would work. And for a couple of years, it grew really nicely, and then it became pretty clear that that model wouldn't work. Both because there were some competitors doing it better than us, and also it just didn't connect to the mission in a way that we needed it to. And so we had to shift from an ad model to a user pay model, and that meant I had to let go of our entire sales and success team. So
yeah, because you would be working with like corporations and ads versus like a direct consumer. So you had to get rid of the entire team.
Which was really brutal. Yeah. And it felt really like my fault, right? Like I had made a bet on something that wouldn't work, and I had hired all these people, and it just felt horrible because I knew that I was negatively impacting their lives. And there wasn't really another option. Like to save the mission of the company, you had to do it. But it was painful. And I tried my best to help all those folks get other jobs, and I'm still in touch with many of them, and I think have good relationships with most of them. But it is one of those things that will go down as a big mistake and a failure, and one that I feel bad about.
Yeah.
I'd say there are a lot of things that felt like failures at the time that turned out not to be too.
Okay.
So like there's, I bucket failures into a few buckets. There's like the small things that are just great learning. There's the big things that have an impact that really hurt you and others, and are hopefully you can minimize those. And then there's the things that are more forks in the road than they are failures. So for instance, when before I took the job at Change, I was recruited for a CEO job at another company that was a people tech company, not that different from Rising Team. It was different in concept, but it was like a rewards and, engagement kind of company. And I was so excited about it, and I really wanted this job. And I hustled and I fought for it and so forth. And in the end, I did not get the job.
Okay.
And it felt like a huge failure to me at the time. I was so disappointed. And, for probably a couple of months, I was like, oh, really, that would have been great.
Yeah.
And then the change.org offer came.
Yeah.
And boy, was it like 100 times better than that other job would have been. And I never would have had that opportunity had the other thing happened. So sometimes the things that feel like failures turn out to be blessings.
Yeah, because in a way, like those failures, it's not a fit for you. So it's not a failure. It's just not a fit.
Exactly.
And that's okay not to be a fit, because then also you're going to wind up in that company and it's not going to work. And you want to both like really, really want it.
That's right.
In order to work. Because I've had experience in my team where I've let people go, and it's like maybe they're in the company for X amount of years and they were successful, but then no, actually the company's changing. It's in a different direction, and it's just not a fit anymore. It doesn't mean that person's not great.
That's right.
And I think that's where we get back into our head. Let's use more of your acronyms here.
Yeah, exactly.
And you make all this stuff up in your mind that you think you are a failure and all those things, and then it's like it's just not a fit, and that's okay.
Right. That's right. And that happens on both sides.
Yeah.
And in this particular case, they didn't actually choose someone instead of me. The founder just decided he didn't want
the role
hire
anymore.
A new CEO. No, he wanted the role still.
Okay.
He's like, I'm not going to leave.
He's not
going to
leave.
stay. So they didn't hire anyone. And,
wow.
I get it. And to your point, that wouldn't have been a fit. Imagine they had hired me.
Then you're stuck.
And then the founder decides he
I want your job
actually
back.
wants the job and wants to do it instead of you and be over on top of you the whole time, right? So there are reasons why things happen. I agree
Sounds
with that
cliche, but
wholeheartedly.
everything happens for a reason.
Yeah,
and it
no,
ended
it's
up
true.
working out in your favor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's, how do you keep going in those moments?
DMSU.
Exactly.
Don't make shit up.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Yeah, and then there's another thing that you talked about when your company, where you went from this ad model to a consumer model, paid. And, I think sometimes we're in those failure moments, what made it resonate for me is when you react in those moments, because you could start just thinking about you and that decision, but it's like you think about the company, the team, and then yourself. Like you got to put all yours
for sure.
You got to be last.
Yes, and this is what I teach in my class. So I teach this class called Managing Growing Enterprises at the Stanford Business School, and we go through the whole process of scaling companies, from hiring and reference checks and onboarding and building up teams, but also we do firing and layoffs.
Yeah.
And we basically talk about this like it may be hard. Letting someone go or doing a riff may be the hardest thing you've ever done as a leader, and no one friggin' cares.
No.
Because it's not about you.
It's not.
It's about them. And if you say, oh, this is so hard, it just makes everything worse. Like you have to put the people first who are impacted.
Yeah, absolutely. We've heard a lot here. We just finished on how to let people go, which is unfortunate, but it's also part of reality, to an amazing journey of how your primary focus is to uplift people. So, in this moment of where we're at and how you want to move forward, who are some amazing women that you would like to mention and uplift?
Yeah. The list is really long. So I will pick two for today, but there are so many incredible women out there in the world that I see every day. Two that come to mind for me. One is a woman that I used to work with at Yahoo named Anne Crady-Weiss. She is a serial entrepreneur. She'd be a great guest. Both of these women would be great
you're noting it.
guests on your podcast. She currently runs a company called Hatch, which is a sleep hardware company. So they started as building products for babies, and then they built this sleep product, and now it's for adults and children.
Wow.
And again, it's very mission oriented because, as we know, like one of the secrets to longevity is good, healthy sleep. And she and her husband actually co-founded this company together, which I really admire. And she's just got so much gusto. And she's done this multiple times, and she fights for everything. And she's grown that company really successfully. So I've always been very impressed with her. The other woman I will mention is a woman named Lola Omolola. She is someone I met in my time at Facebook. She started a community for women called FIN. Female IN. I'm not sure what the IN stands for. You'll have to ask her. It is one of the largest communities for women in the world.
Oh, my goodness.
You got to have her in. She lives in Chicago, but she's from Nigeria, and she started this community for Nigerian women. And she talk about uplifting others. She just lifts people's spirits, and she's brought all of these women together, including during some very difficult times that have happened with young girls in Nigeria. And I've just been amazed at her ability to be a movement starter, and
That's awesome.
wish her all the best.
Wow, great.
Beautiful. I can't wait to talk to her.
I know.
I know
we're
some
definitely
Nigerian friends. They're all positive and passionate about stuff. So
Yeah, they ask them if they know about Finn, because I think they do.
All right.
Okay.
All right. We're taking all this on the road. We're going to do it.
And for the rest of your list, we expect an email in the next couple weeks, please, with the full gamut.
I see it in my students too. Like so many of the people in my class, I just see their bright potential, and it's exciting.
The rising stars.
Yeah. I have lots of impressive students, but there's one woman who might be great for this, Haley. She started this company that helps people fight their insurance claims when they get overcharged by their insurance companies, which is so critical because so many people are bankrupted
For sure.
by insurance that won't cover their costs. And she's already, it's been less than a year, and they've already saved people like $2 million
Oh my
in
goodness.
insurance fees.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
check
she
on
might
it.
be good.
All right. Thank you, Jennifer.
Yes, thank you. This was awesome.
Thank
amazing.
you. I am so excited by this Humanize Her movement, and I can't wait to watch the rest of the shows and meet more of the people, and congrats.
Thank you so much for your support. Yay.
And thank you to all of you for listening in.
Thank you.
That's a wrap.
I would like to thank our behind-scenes crew for Humanize Her, our creative director and producer, Alex Sully, our talented director of photography and producer, Becky Davis, our director of brand and design, Kristen West. Your contributions are invaluable, and I'm grateful for the partnership in making Humanize Her a reality.